Hello and welcome to the Madras Medai podcast. This series is powered by the British Council.
My name is Tejas Nair and I'm your host for today. Madras Medai launched in 2018 as a premier Tamil music festival which celebrates equality through music. It was the first of its kind, multi-genre music festival with over 4,000 attendees in its first ever edition. The festival brought together performances from across the Tamil diaspora, with a focus on inclusivity and diversity. Our latest edition of the festival was slated to take place in March of the year 2020. Unfortunately, it coincided with the same week that India announced its lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic. This caused us to have cancelled the first ever edition of Madras Medai in partnership with the British Council. However, it led to us planning a series of conversations over many months, which has now come to life as this podcast. I'm joined today by the co-founders of Madras Medai Festival, music producer and creative entrepreneur OfRo, music director, activist, and entrepreneur Tenma. How's it going, guys?
Hi, Tenma and Tejas. It's going good. Like we're in the middle of the second. I think I've lost count of the number of lockdowns we've been in at this point. But it's good. I think after all these months, we have all found a little sweet spot and figured out a way to work over the internet and things like that. So yeah, it's great to be here.
Hi, OfRo. Hi, Tejas. Glad to be here. Like OfRo said, yeah, we've sort of found a sweet spot because, crossing the conversations of, like uncertainty and like negativity, I think now there's some sort of like a mental balance as to how we can deal with the lockdown, like to the basic necessities, getting basic necessities, and having a life as a freelancer, musician, entrepreneur, whatever it is. So I think we're at a different state of mind than what we were probably last year. So and yeah, this is I guess this is the way forward.
Yeah, for sure, and I think we have a lot to unpack in this chat, and hopefully we can do it justice as a precursor to 5 amazing conversations I think that have been facilitated through this series. And just a quick primer for those of us joining in or tuning in. This series has come together as an effort to carry forward conversations that were meant to take place at Madras Medai's physical edition back in March of 2020, but we've rejigged the programming and found new faces and names to bring together a collaboration between Indian music practitioners or music business professionals, along with professionals and creatives from all across the UK and the Northern Islands and Wales. And the idea for this podcast in many ways is to act as a knowledge sharing resource and a source of maybe skills, maybe inspiration for young practitioners entering the space in such uncertain times. We welcome you to the Madras Medai podcast. And with that, I'm going to open this up to both of you to maybe take our listeners through what is your view on the independent music and arts ecosystem in South India, and maybe more specifically in Tamil Nadu, and how you guys fit into that ecosystem.
Okay, so the independent scene through the years has, I think it's slowly getting glued together, but it started out as a very fragmented scene through various people and various businesses and benefactors and patrons. It started coming together. I don't want to go into the details of what happened when and everything, but I would say the curve has just been like slowly going up. And right now, I think we are in a space where it's part of pop culture. The conversation has moved from just indoors and like very conversation between like a couple of groups now it's become part of pop culture, and people are taking up independent music as a career. And and children are pretty proud of saying they are independent musicians because they feel a sense of I guess it's almost at the rebellious anarchy stage where we are in during our adolescence. This seems like a counter to what the mainstream is. I think as they as they grow older, they will realize the how you work with the system and like or whatever it is. But Tamil independent scene right now is getting married with the has gotten married with the art scene, the art sector, and it isn't a hobby anymore. So it's clearly like people who are getting seriously into Tamil independent music realize, okay, there are some guiding lights to this. We can choose a path. It can be any genre for that matter. It can be like hip hop and like folk music, or like it can be symphonic music, whatever it is. They can see there's some sort of like hope at everywhere, and what they are getting access to is established music composers who work predominantly in films are now reaching out to them, and the exchange is happening. And that is getting into a very healthy holistic space. We're able to have these conversations, and we're able to see how we can work together and move things forward. So right now it's built, it's glued together, and it's in a really good comfortable stage. I wouldn't say it's bad. I don't, because I don't think, because usually when you say independent music, it used to be a something which is associated with like like a bedroom producer, or like somebody who's like not exactly a bedroom producer is sad, but somebody who's like out of financial sort of like independence and all of those things. But now it's like, okay, we can find ways to make money. There are other avenues also, so that confidence is coming in. But I think the COVID situation sort of put them out of balance. But somehow, just because of the digital connections, that borders have broken through all of these conversations between, like, there are various platforms now people can have a conversation. Like, for example, Clubhouse, for like, people can directly have a conversation with who's in the room, and they can actually listen and absorb and like grow. And you can see the like, I know, like, people who belong to my age group, probably we just took some time to understand and absorb any sort of information. I would say usually, like, music wise, we're 10 years late. Before, we used to get music late, like cassettes and everything. What is the trending thing right now? But now we know who's on top of the game. Immediately we can see, because of the internet, and like the mbps increasing and all of those things, makes us more in tuned with the business, and the not the business, at least the trends and the conversations about music globally. So that is giving people to be in a better space. Like, for example, nfts. Now everybody's having a conversation about in Clubhouse, or in this genre or otherwise. So it's making so I think it's in a really good place.
Like Tenma said, I guess the important thing about the evolution of the independent scene here is that we saw it going from predominantly a hobby to like a self discovery of an artist, uh, towards actually changing to become more and more competitive every day, and the artists themselves have developed an idea of how they want to be portrayed or how they want to approach these things. So in every way, like the independent arts, independent music scene has become more competitive and more thriving. And yes, it has reached the mainstream as well. And there's like a lot of there are a lot of eyeballs on emerging independent artists from South India.
Yeah, cool. And I think it's safe to say that the two of you in your own capacities as producers and music directors have had the opportunity to work within these, interesting pockets of either independent music or film music and so on and so forth. But the flip side to that coin is that the two of you have also been engaged under the Madras Medai banner and other projects in fairly grassroots movements to develop talent and to develop a pool of artists that can learn from each other, inspire each other, and together create a community, a scene that stands the test of time and can progress through the ranks, possibly into the mainstream. What do you guys think is the importance of that grassroots culture, and why devote that time and energy towards building that space?
One of the big barriers to entering the independent scene is that there was no real place to uh, there was no physical place for a bunch of people to get together and share ideas and network with each other. In fact, when Tenma and I were in college, like 12 years ago, there was a place called Unwind Center that would host Friday night gigs for really cheap. It was 100 rupees to enter. In fact, 100 rupees was still pretty expensive for us back then. But what this created is created a group. It created a small bubble of artists who looked at other people performing and got inspired and formed their own bands. And some of those bands still exist today, 12 years later. Like Scrat is an example of that, of a band like that has gone to see a lot of success. And started out at a really grassroots level. And likewise, in recent times, with the once Tenma and I got together through Madras Medai, I'll actually let Tenma explain this even better, because it started with a really grassroots idea called the Madras Indie Collective, where we hosted small events where we would just have like 30 people, maybe 20 people sometimes. But the music was always really special, and therefore we kind of like reinvigorated the scene to start networking and meeting each other. And even though that was such a small spark, that one thing led to the next and the next and next. And here we are 4 years later, being involved in several grassroots movements like Thirukkural or Casteless Collective, or and several more, like right now all the way to horticulture. All of these things that seem like a big movement now actually started from something really, really small.
I think it was the idea of an independent musician always seemed like a guy with a guitar and like singing at an event, and that idea had to be broken, because that's not always the case. That's just like a stereotypical symbolism that's just stuck in our head. But what I would say, like Madras Indie Collective, we sort of tried to break those barriers. We had a different music. The audience was curated. It was more like a European idea, where you have like your garden party with like people make their homemade wines and homemade cheese and have music, and it's just different people coming together. That's sort of an event where we spoke about very uncomfortable topics as well, and it was the people who hung out also were not the usual sort of crowd. It wasn't like, and it wasn't just like an echo chamber. It used to be people with opposing ideas also came from different frames of mind, and that sort of like led to us understanding what are we dealing with first, just to understand what the scene is, who's going to come forward and like take this scene forward. And then I think after Casteless Collective, it sort of brought some context, and it kept building context from, I think, Madras Indie Collective, Casteless Collective, Madras Medai, Thirukkural. Everything just started building these conversations and as to who are we in this sort of era of art, and how is the context relevant to the land, to this land. The geography started making a lot of sense. With you can be like really strong and sing in Tamil and do not be scared that nobody will recognize it, because there is a space and now there is an audience for you to listen to it. So by working on these grassroots, see, I also believe in one person can never change a scene. It's a collective, like what Timbaland says. Like if you'll be, if you want to do it alone, you'll be good. But if you want to be great, you have to do it together. So it's a collective movement of everybody working together. It doesn't matter which genre you belong to. And more importantly, I think like OfRo and me, although we come from traditional music, learning sort of methods, that I think through our college and like post that also, it is predominantly a jamming tradition. So the jamming tradition led us to meeting people and hanging out, and just our whole conditioning was getting broken from within. And this sort of led to like the whole Ghana scene, for instance. The Ghana scene also is a jamming tradition, but here the situation of privilege is different. One being from a disenfranchised community, and one from a sort of a privileged sort of community. So when both those worlds collide, there's something great which comes out of it. So I think it's important to also keep these things going forward. Like, because some people have got success, that doesn't mean we should stop the fight. We still need to bring new artists need to come in, and it's our sort of social responsibility. It became sort of a social responsibility, and Madras Medai became a platform of that social responsibility to bring that education and bring that information to people who are probably need. We can't sit and teach everybody, right? We need a space where we can cover a lot more people. So Madras Medai in turn accelerated the grassroots movement to start becoming more of a stronger unit. So I think that's just the point I want to make.
Cool. And moving on from there, can you give us a sense of how exactly Madras Medai as a festival came together? Why did it come together? And the steps that led us to that point.
While the Madras Indie Collective was going on, and you could see like original content creators coming out and doing all of these things, it was necessary to have a large scale exhibition for the world to sort of notice that these things are happening here. And Madras Medai just seemed like Medai means stage, so the Madras stage. So this had to become a platform to make that impact for Tamil independent music. That impact of the and our line which goes celebrating equality in music. So which goes in the Madras stage, which celebrates the equality in music. So we were trying to from one end I was trying to pull in artists from different like CNR and Otta Severa and acts like that. OfRo was trying to get an act together, and he had his solo stuff with him. So in this conversation then led to Casteless Collective, and Casteless Collective's debut show made a severe impact, which had about 7,000 people. So then we could gauge that, okay, with the right type of content, with the right type of planning, we'll be able to have something which brings a lot of these people in. Because now we need to understand, if you're going to celebrate equality in music on stage, we need to celebrate equality in music off stage as well. So these different it was a place where we could cross pollinate between different types of audience groups. So these audience groups came from everywhere, and once we knew where we were going, we got in the acts, and correctly at that time we had a conversation with Dopedelics, and they got on board. So they brought in the Dharavi and the Tamil element from there, and it became sort of it was a multi-genre festival. Also, we had the Sunshine Orchestra, which is A.R. Rahman's a symphony. So imagine that we had like a symphony, we had like one Jatayu, which is like more of a Indo-fusion sort of Carnatic funk band. We had like OfRo doing his stuff. We had Casteless Collective. We had Chinnaponu. We had extremes on the same stage. So this extreme, as genres they were different, but as people they were one. At the backstage, everybody felt united. So this is what. So these are the things which led to the Madras Medai. And I think after that, when we were doing the Madras Medai Expo, because we're doing a festival, an event, but also what we realize is people need information. See, OfRo and me, we are all studied from abroad education, and there's a set of skills you learn from your peers in these schools, where you get all of this information. But what is the point if we just hold those things together? We had to let those things out. That's when we you came on board, and with your expertise we built the Madras Medai Expo, which was catering towards the education and the development of the psychological aspect of being an independent artist. And what are the tools? I'm just making a song. I can't just put it out on like a Facebook upload. Or I can't just put it on what is Spotify, what is distribution, how do we take it forward, and what are your rights? Who are you in this system? And in fact, we are like Kumar Raja was going to speak about art and like the development of the social conscious of art. As a filmmaker who's coming, because honestly, usually I don't think most of us who found a certain level of success, a certain level of achievement as artists, not just got inspired by music, we also got inspired by other things like film and paintings or poetry or whatever it means, cooking also, it doesn't matter. But these things sort of led us to who we are, because music is an extension of who we are. So this sort of education is also necessary. A sense of community, a sense of gathering, a sense of collective consciousness was important for us to take the scene forward. But unfortunately, pandemic hit and we can't. And but hopefully, through this podcast, we'll be able to take things forward, and like see what we can do to cultivate the talent.
Yeah, and hopefully we can at least keep the conversation ongoing, because we're not going to remain in the pandemic forever, right? These lockdowns will end, and when things get back to some resemblance of normalcy or something new entirely, there's at least a conversation that has carried us through this time. And from what you said, maybe OfRo, you can talk about this a little bit. I think the lens through which the curation and programming of the Madras Medai Expo, which was supposed to take place in 2020, was done with not just addressing the representation of music in South India, but also addressing the skills gap and the accessibility issues and other systemic problems within what we know as the media or music industry, right? What are your thoughts on that?
When we were planning the Madras Medai Expo, it was literally the week that India went into lockdown. So we were all really excited for what we had planned, because finally we had created we had curated what was, in my opinion, the best lineup of interesting resources for any young practitioner in the independent scene. And even if you're not in the independent scene, you would have just come there, and the conversations of the people you meet would have been epic. And this was supposed to happen at KM Conservatory, so it's already got that school atmosphere, that campus atmosphere. So literally everybody who would have attended that festival would have got a feeling of going back to school and hanging out with friends, and those that's like it was a really exciting event that we had planned. So the curation was so on point, like that. It was not just learning; it was also fun, and it was also networking, and all of those things. So it was like Tenma said, it was a major disappointment to us when we had to cancel the event. And we did not know how to cope from that, and we just like everybody else was confused, we were confused too. So we found ourselves on all these online groups and finding other support groups and speaking to uh, in fact I'd say this lockdown had catalyzed the conversations between South India and the rest of India. Suddenly people from the rest of the country started speaking to people here as well. And so through this entire process of the last 1 year, 1.5 years, we as independent artists and professionals in the industry, we have found a way through through this lockdown to still continue to do what we do and do it and flourish while we're doing it. So I think for us at this point, because we can't do that badass lineup that we had earlier, here this podcast is supposed to be like a snippet of what would have happened if we were able to pull this off physically. So that's why we've got conversations with our representatives from UK as well as India, and we've got interesting guests on the show like Santosh Narayanan and people who are literally on top of the industry. So we're really looking forward to these conversations that we're going to be having over the next few episodes. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, and definitely there's going to be a lot to unpack in those conversations. Tenma, can you maybe give our listeners a quick sort of insight into what it is they can expect to receive at the end of these 6 episodes and tuning into these conversations, whether they're artists or they're just enthusiasts of music in South India or hoping to enter the music ecosystem in whatever capacity?
Yeah, so after listening to all the podcasts we've taped so far and the context we have sort of brought in, one thing is there are two approaches we have. One is the tech and one is the community part of it. And how do you work in within a community and who are you? It starts off with the whole question of how do we cope in this pandemic? So from there, because people should know at this point nobody's alone. Everybody's facing a similar battle, and as artists and freelancers without a sort of like sense of money where the next job is going to be, it might lead you to find creative ways to give solutions. Some things which we were not doing before pandemic, we might do it. We have taken those methods as entrepreneurs, and this might help people to create new job opportunities for themselves. So that sort of thing. Then we're going through the whole currency of the internet. What is actually happening? Because by just uploading a track, that doesn't mean you'll get us a specific amount. What is a percentage? What are these things which happen behind a track? A song is not just .wav. It also is like, how do you where does it go, deploying it, and where and all can you see this track? How can you get it on all of these things? Hopefully, you'll be able to understand the tech part about it, because we have some really good people on the tech front taking care of this, and also having these remote artistic collaborations. How do you work around through this pandemic, through a lockdown? Probably you want to record somebody in a different part of the world, or different part of the state, or different part of a district. How do you what methods are there, what devices are there to use? There are, but these are the resources we are supplying through this podcast. For we're just giving away this thing so that we can have more music, more talent, more art coming out of every part of whoever's listening to it, wherever they are from, so they can comfortably like do their own thing without any hindrance. That there's always a solution for some of these things. So that's pretty much it. You go through the entire process. It's not a very very basic music educational podcast, but it's a very intense integral podcast for building the structure of yourself as an artist, as a young artist, an older artist trying to learn new methods. Anybody can learn from this podcast. So hopefully this is a good educational tool for up and coming independent artists.
And to add to that, I feel like if anybody out there is listening and has questions and is looking for some kind of answer to like a bunch of questions in with regards to their career and how to develop it and things like that, feel free. You must follow Madras Medai. Feel free to follow each of us and just hit us up in the DMs, and we will try our best to like help you or put you in touch with somebody who can help you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And I think it's safe to say that, much like everyone else who's felt restless and confused and lost in the last year and a half, so have the three of us as professionals, as creative practitioners. So have the experts that joined us on these conversations, from the ones that are right at the very top or working at the fringes of the music industry and ecosystem, trying to, change the norm, so to speak. And there's also a whole lot, I think, there is to learn from counterparts on the other side of the world, over in the UK. And I think a huge reason for that was enabling this partnership with the British Council and realizing that it took an entire year, if not more, of isolation from the rest of the world and from life that we were used to as it was, to realize that these problems exist everywhere, and it's not that much different from Chennai to somewhere else in the UK, or so on and so forth. So yeah, hopefully all of that information and conversations are valuable. For anyone listening, we're also putting together a package of assets that the speakers on the series have been kind enough to offer. There's some really interesting reading material, there's some templates, there's some samples, there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that you can go through and hopefully apply in some cool ways. And like OfRo said, if you do want to connect with us and continue these conversations offline, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Clubhouse, Discord, wherever you like. We are all across the metaverse. So yeah, highly encourage that you check out the other episodes. And if you know anyone else thinking of or looking to enter the music ecosystem in South India, or anywhere else for that matter, I think these conversations will prove useful. So thank you both for your time, and thank you very much for tuning in. And I hope you enjoy the Madras Medai podcast series. This is your host, Tejas Nair Spryk, signing off.